Chapter 3564, Chapter 638, Meeting of Talents. Chapter 3564, Chapter 638, Meeting of Talents. Chapter 638, Meeting of Talents. Zero Wing Training Center, Guild Leader's Office. 24 young men and women were gathered in the office that was half the size of a basketball court. The oldest among these individuals was just nearing 25, while the youngest was just nearing 16. Apart from their youthfulness, these youths had another thing in common: they were all incredibly talented lifestyle players. Placed in any upper-ranking hegemonic power, these youths would be put on a pedestal and receive full support in their development. Many powerful experts would also be willing to pay a high price to acquire customized tools and equipment from these youths. At this time, though, these youths all wore anxious expressions as they stood in the spacious office. It was true that they were top talents of their respective corporations or families. It was also true that should they join an upper-ranking hegemonic power, they would receive priority nurturing. However, their value as individuals remained insignificant when compared to the young man seated before them. Zero Wing's guild leader, Shifeng. He was a legendary figure in the region of the continent they currently resided in. He had played a key role in elevating Star Lake City from a third-tier mobile city into a second-tier mobile city and made Zero Wing a highly sought-after partner for the various upper-ranking powers. In the future, he might even be able to help Zero Wing move into a first-tier mobile city. "Do you think we can be selected, Big Brother?" a 16-year-old girl anxiously asked the tall and robust young man beside her. "We only managed to come in 4th and 5th in forging success rates this time. I also heard that Jade River is receiving personal guidance from guild leader Shifeng. Now that she has been promoted into a Grandmaster Forger, if the guild leader is only looking for 4 forgers, will most likely get disqualified." The current Zero Wing was extraordinarily popular in the area. Many corporations and powerful families had sent their combat talents to Zero Wing. But because Zero Wing could only afford to recruit a limited number of players, competition for these limited slots was incredibly intense. Meanwhile, as Zero Wing was recruiting even fewer lifestyle players, competition among lifestyle players was even more intense. If the chances of a combat player getting selected were 1 in 1,000, the chances of a lifestyle player getting selected were 1 in 10,000. Moreover, even after making it into Zero Wing, one still couldn't relax. After all, more and more talents were bound to join Zero Wing in the future. Once Zero Wing filled up the residential slots it had in Star Lake City, it would have to start sending some of its members to third-tier cities to make room for more talented individuals. At this point, the only way Zero Wing members could guarantee themselves a place in Star Lake City was if they became an internal core member of the guild. Now that Shifeng had suddenly gathered them here, it was their best opportunity to prove their worth. If they could get selected for whatever task Shifeng had for them, it would make becoming a core member much easier for them in the future. "Don't worry. While our success rates aren't high, seeing as guild leader Shifeng has gathered so many of us here, I'm sure we will be given a fair test. If we're lucky, it is still possible for us to be chosen," the tall young man going by the name of Huarong replied anxiously. In the family they came from, he and his little sister were considered the most talented forgers in their family's history, and they took pride in that fact. However, when they applied to join Zero Wing, they quickly understood that they weren't anything special. When they applied to join Zero Wing, over 1 million other forging geniuses had also done so. Among them, quite a few were already Grandmaster Forgers despite being under 20 years of age. It was only through sheer luck that they managed to stand out from the competition and get recruited. Had they formed even a little worse during the recruitment test, it wouldn't have been strange for them to get disqualified. At this time, the other lifestyle geniuses in the room similarly felt anxious. It was especially so for Silk Radish and Jade River, whom Shifeng had specifically summoned. Unlike the other lifestyle grandmasters present, they didn't get into Zero Wing by surviving an intense competition. Instead, they had gotten in because of their connection with Aqua Rose. They had also only become lifestyle grandmasters recently because of all the resources Zero Wing had poured into them. So, if Shifeng wanted them to compete against the other lifestyle grandmasters present, they highly doubted they could achieve a pleasant result. "No need to be nervous," Shifeng said, chuckling when he saw the anxious faces before him. "I might have called you here for a project, But I don't need you to complete it if you can't. I just want to see how much you can accomplish. The Silverwing flying ship was a highly complicated work requiring multiple classes to complete. It possessed enough firepower to outgun even a Tier 6 player, and the difficulty of its construction easily exceeded even that of legendary equipment. The requirement for magicians was especially high, as even Grandmaster magicians would find it challenging to construct the required magic arrays. Not to mention, a secret silver flying ship simply wasn't something a few dozen players could complete within a reasonable amount of time. At the very least, several hundred players would be needed for the task. It simply wasn't something Zero Wing could attempt at manufacturing at present. As for why he had summoned Zero Wing's internal lifestyle members, it was to see how much of the Silverwing flying ship's crucial components they could complete. That way, he could prepare the necessary resources for these young geniuses to tackle the parts they couldn't manufacture. Meanwhile, everyone sighed in relief when they heard Shifeng's explanation. Then, they couldn't help but start to wonder what kind of project Shifeng had for them to only expect them to be able to complete a certain portion. Come over and take a look. Afterward, tell me how much you can complete, Shifeng said as he pointed at the component designs on his desk. However, these designs were limited to the Silverwing flying ship's core components. The Silverwing flying ship design consisted of several hundred components, of which 30-something were core. These core components were also the most challenging to overcome. Meanwhile, by sharing only the core components, he could conceal the Silverwing flying ship to a large extent, as it would be impossible to tell that these core components were for a flying ship just by looking at them. Following Shifeng's instructions, everyone gathered around the desk and analyzed the various designs on display. Everyone did their analysis carefully, afraid they might miss minor details that could cause problems with the final product. After 8 hours, the 24 lifestyle grandmasters finished their analysis. Then, with the help of the office's God's domain simulation cabins, they quickly performed a rudimentary simulation. Once everyone finished their respective simulations, Shifeng said, "Well then, what are your completion rates?" "I can complete 50% of the forging designs. I can complete 60% of the engineering designs. I can complete 65% of the forging designs." Hearing everyone's report, Shifeng couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. Nobody reported a completion rate lower than 50%, and everyone's problems were concentrated on the power source's magic arrays. In that case, he would only need to collect materials for the power source and have everyone practice constructing it repeatedly. At this time, a tall young man suddenly stepped forward from the group. Then, while scratching his head, he anxiously said, "I can complete the forging designs at a 20% success rate, 20%? When Shifeng first heard the percentage the tall young man reported, his first reaction was to ask why the young man could only complete so little of the forging designs. However, before he could voice his doubts, his attention was quickly drawn to two of the young man's words. Success rate. Completion rate and success rates were two entirely different concepts. If a lifestyle player reported that they only had a completion rate for a project, it meant that they could only manufacture a certain portion of the project. As for the remaining portion, they wouldn't be able to manufacture it no matter what. On the other hand, if a lifestyle player reported a success rate for a project, it meant that they could manufacture the entire project. Even if the success rate was only 20%, it was still infinitely better than nothing. "What is your name?" Shifeng couldn't help but ask as he looked at the tall youth. "If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 3565, Chapter 639, Pseudo-Divine Artifact Forger. Chapter 3565, Chapter 639, Pseudo-Divine Artifact Forger. Chapter 639, Pseudo-Divine Artifact Forger. A 20% success rate? Is that guy bluffing? I doubt even great Grandmaster Forgers can get a 40% success rate. He's only an advanced Grandmaster, and his forging success rate even ranked 4th among us previously, yet he's now claiming he can achieve a 20% success rate? He's probably trying to catch the guild leader's attention. Following the tall young man's answer, many of the other young geniuses in the room couldn't help but start a hushed discussion among themselves. Although nobody present knew that the designs Shifeng shared were for a secret silver flying ship's core components, as lifestyle grandmasters, they could still identify the complexity of these designs. Meanwhile, their knowledge told them that some of these designs were already beyond the means of lifestyle grandmasters to manufacture. So, when everyone heard the tall youth saying he could manufacture all of the forging designs, their immediate reaction was to doubt his claims. Of course, everyone could also understand why the young man would lie about his capabilities. The current Zero Wing was akin to the midday sun in Star Lake City. It was the power with the most residential slots for Star Lake City. As a result, many geniuses and paragons from the hundreds of nearby third-tier mobile cities and thousands of towns sought to join Zero Wing. Furthermore, the benefits Zero Wing offered to its core members were tempting even to the various corporations and powerful families. So long as one could become a core member of Zero Wing, one could spend guild contribution points to exchange for precious resources such as Stardew. It was even possible to exchange for the right to enter the Eternal Realm. The Eternal Realm was a realm that countless players sought to enter in the current Greater God's domain. The opportunities available in the Eternal Realm were beyond any other realm. There had even been rumors of ordinary lifestyle players becoming VIPs in conglomerates and pseudo-apex powers after learning a unique recipe or design in the Eternal Realm. Unfortunately, as there still wasn't a way for players to reach the Eternal Realm from the outside, lifestyle players outside the Eternal Realm could only look on in envy. So, now that Zero Wing was offering its members an opportunity to enter the Eternal Realm, how could they not be excited? Of course, they had only learned about these core member benefits after becoming internal members of Zero Wing and signing a God's Domain contract and a guild contract. This was also why they had worked so enthusiastically after joining Zero Wing. It was all so they could become core members as soon as possible. Huarong, the tall young man, answered anxiously. He could naturally hear the hushed discussions behind him, and he couldn't help but grow worried Shifeng might come to the same conclusion as his peers. It was especially so after he had heard all of his peers reporting completion rates of about 50 to 60% only. Honestly, at this point, even he couldn't help but start to doubt his simulation results. However, it was a fact that he had ended up with a 20% success rate after conducting numerous simple simulations via the God's Domain simulation cabin. Hence, this result should be absolutely correct. After all, the God's Domain simulation cabin could perfectly simulate various matters from God's Domain. Even though the simulation cabin was incapable of replicating lifestyle procedures as well as it could combat, which could usually achieve over 90% uniformity, its simple simulations still shouldn't be too far off from the real deal. At the very least, instances where one could successfully manufacture an item via the simulation cabin but couldn't in God's Domain shouldn't exist. Huarong. Melting flame. Shifeng's curiosity was piqued when he heard the young man's name. Do your forging success rates fluctuate significantly? For example, do you experience situations where you get only half the average success rate when you're unlucky, and 10 or 20% higher than the average when you're lucky? Emitem. Huarong nodded in surprise. He didn't think Shifeng would know of his forging circumstances. When I'm lucky, I can achieve success rates 10 or 20% higher than others. But if I'm unlucky, I'd be fortunate if I can even achieve a 10% success rate. Honestly, Huarong felt very distressed about his own unique situation. If he could stabilize his erratic forging success rates, he could have long joined a conglomerate with his younger sister and become internal members there. Okay, I understand. Shifeng nodded and smiled. Since it's the simulation cabin's result, it should be correct. In that case, may I know if you are interested in becoming a core member of Zero Wing? A core member of Zero Wing? Me? Huarong was stunned. Originally, he had been worried Shifeng would refuse to believe in his result and have him manufacture the items in God's Domain. After all, he had only managed a 20% success rate in the simple simulations. In God's Domain, having a 20% success rate didn't necessarily mean players could absolutely succeed in manufacturing an item every 1 out of 5 tries. Instead, the numbers were much more down-to-earth, and players would be fortunate to even succeed once or twice out of 30 tries. Meanwhile, the designs Shifeng shared required materials so precious that even the various major powers would have difficulty obtaining them. At best, they could only take out a few sets on short notice, which should also be true for Zero Wing. In that case, even if Huarong could perfectly transfer his simulation success rate to God's domain, his chances of manufacturing the items were slim. At that time, not only would he make a fool of himself, but he would also be at risk of getting kicked out of Zero Wing. That's right. Shifeng nodded. And it's not just you. Anyone who has achieved a 70% completion rate can also become a core member of Zero Wing. Huarong's name was known by all in Shifeng's previous life. One could even say that his name was recorded in the annals of the Greater God's Domain's history. Only, by the time Huarong had risen to fame, he was already much older than he was now. Moreover, at the time, Huarong didn't belong to any of the various major powers. Instead, he was only a member of an ordinary hegemonic power. Meanwhile, Huarong's fame wasn't because he was unbelievably talented. Even at his peak, he had only managed to develop his forging skills to the basic Great Grandmaster standard. Craftsmen like Silent Wonder and Silk Radish would leave him in the dust if compared only in ranks. Instead, the reason for Huarong's fame was his ability to produce items sought after by even the various apex powers. Or, more specifically, he had manufactured items that were outside the abilities of even craftsman forgers. Pseudo-divine artifact. Or, more specifically, replicas of bona fide divine artifacts. Moreover, the precision of these replicas was so high that they could reach the fragmented divine artifact rank. Compared to replicas that could only achieve ranks such as legendary and fragmented legendary, Huarong's divine artifact replicas were in a completely different realm. Hence, when the Greater God's Domain's various powers learned that a pseudo-divine artifact had come from the hands of a great Grandmaster forger, they couldn't help but be dumbfounded. After all, even craftsman forgers could only manufacture legendary weapons and equipment at a very low success rate, let alone pseudo-divine artifacts. Yet, Huarong had accomplished this miraculous feat not just once, but 3 times, silencing everyone who thought he had only gotten lucky. As for the reason Huarong could produce pseudo-divine artifacts, it was because he possessed a divine craftsman talent that nobody else had. Even Huarong himself had only discovered this talent after getting promoted into a great Grandmaster forger. Meanwhile, the talent's effects were simple. It granted Huarong a minimum success rate of 10 to 20% when he was manufacturing weapons and equipment above the epic rank and reduced his success rate by 10% when he was manufacturing weapons and equipment at the epic rank or below. If he was manufacturing items that weren't weapons or equipment, his success rate would increase or decrease depending on the rank of the materials used. The existence of this talent was why Huarong had been ignored for a long time. Grandmaster forgers were very common for the Greater God's Domain's various powers. Meanwhile, these Grandmaster forgers would be tasked with producing epic weapons and equipment most of the time, and very rarely would they have an opportunity to manufacture weapons and equipment above the epic rank. Even if such a project fell into the hands of Grandmaster forgers, those selected would usually be advanced Grandmaster forgers with a good track record. For someone like Huarong, who couldn't even produce epic weapons and equipment at a decent success rate, there was no way he would be given an opportunity to produce items above the epic rank. My little sister, Hualing, is also as talented as I am in forging, guild leader. Although she didn't achieve a 70% completion rate, she is only one step short of becoming a great Grandmaster magician. If she can become a great Grandmaster magician, I believe she can fully complete the forging designs as well, Huarong said as he pointed at a 16-year-old girl standing nearby. Only one step short of becoming a great Grandmaster magician? Shifeng's eyes brightened as he turned to look at the girl Huarong was pointing at. Then, he eagerly asked, "Is that true?" TL notes, 1. Huarong and Hualing. Just a heads up, Huarong will be Melting Flame in the game. Hualing will be Flaming Bell in the game. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3566, Chapter 640, Eternal Magic Armor's Trial Production. Chapter 3566, Chapter 640, Eternal Magic Armor's Trial Production. Chapter 640, Eternal Magic Armor's Trial Production. If you don't believe me, I can have my sister draw a magic array to prove herself right now, guild leader. Huarong couldn't help but panic a little when he heard Shifeng's sudden question, and he hurried to offer an explanation. Everyone else present was similarly surprised by Shifeng's reaction, and they couldn't help but wonder why Shifeng would express such great interest in a girl who was still one step short of becoming a great grandmaster magician. After all, he didn't even react in such a way when hearing about Huarong's ability to fully manufacture the forging designs he provided. There was a vast difference between half-step great grandmaster magicians and true great grandmaster magicians. Over 99% of advanced grandmaster magicians in the greater God's domain could never be able to take the final step. Hence, while great grandmaster magicians were incredibly rare in God's domain, advanced grandmaster magicians who were one step short of becoming great grandmasters were not. It wouldn't even be an exaggeration to say that such advanced grandmaster magicians were a dime a dozen. Take the current Zero Wing, for example. So long as Zero Wing gave the word, many such advanced grandmaster magicians would be ready at its service. No need. I believe you. Also, very few people can become an advanced grandmaster magician at such a young age, so she is indeed qualified to become a core member of Zero Wing, Shifeng said, shaking his head. Then, he swept his gaze across the other youths in the room and asked, "Is anyone else here an advanced grandmaster magician?" Following Shifeng's question, the other youths in the room turned to look at each other, but none of them raised their hands. That's a shame. Shifeng sighed as he looked at the silent crowd. Half-step great grandmaster magicians were indeed common in the greater God's domain, but half-step great grandmaster magicians who were also advanced grandmaster forgers were not. Such talent remained precious to the various powers, and it was especially so for the current Zero Wing. Since returning from the Nameless City, Shifeng had desperately sought to materialize the Eternal Magic Armor equipment set. After all, the Eternal Magic Armor's forging process wasn't particularly complicated. Apart from needing sufficient knowledge of magic arrays to engrave the intricate Eternal Battle Array, the only other major challenge was procuring a large supply of Eternal God Crystals. So long as these two requirements were met, any Grandmaster Forger could produce the Eternal Magic Armor. Originally, Shifeng had planned to produce the Eternal Magic Armor himself. But as the guild leader of Zero Wing, he had many things he needed to do, and he couldn't afford to spend too much time on manufacturing items. Ultimately, he would need other lifestyle players to manufacture the set. Only then could Zero Wing have a long-term supply of the Eternal Magic Armor. Meanwhile, although Shifeng had not heard of Huarling's name in his previous life, the fact that she met the Eternal Magic Armor's manufacturing requirements would naturally catch his interest. Since there is no one else, apart from Huarong and Huarling, anyone who has achieved a completion rate of 70% or above can apply with Pace Angel to become a core member. Once you do so, Pace Angel will give you a set of coordinates in the Greater God's domain. Head to the coordinates at the designated time, and someone will bring you to the Eternal Realm. After saying so, Shifeng got out of his seat and left his office. Meanwhile, the youths remaining in the office immediately exploded into an uproar. Crap! It was actually true. The Eternal Realm. I can't believe we get to go to the Eternal Realm, damn it. I only managed to get a 65% completion rate this time. If only it was higher. Although they had long heard that core members could travel to the Eternal Realm, it wasn't until Shifeng said it himself that they truly understood that the opportunity was real and that it wasn't just a slogan to motivate guild members. This situation caused those who failed to meet Shifeng's requirements to feel envious and disappointed. This is great, Radish. We are going to the Eternal Realm, Jade River said excitedly to the person beside her. Silk Radish nodded in response, though she still couldn't help but feel like she was dreaming. Originally, with the appearance of a monster such as Huarong, Silk Radish felt their chances of becoming a core member of Zero Wing would fall to zero. However, she didn't expect those who achieved a 70% completion rate would get to become core members as well. Meanwhile, as luck would have it, both she and Jade River achieved a 70% completion rate in their simulations, securing them a spot among Zero Wing's core members and an opportunity to enter the Eternal Realm. Nowadays, there was nobody who didn't know about the Greater God's domain's Eternal Realm. Everyone knew the Eternal Realm was a place of countless opportunities, and the growth players could achieve there was far superior to other realms. The speed at which players could earn money was also many times faster. Take the current market value of eternal coins, for example. Just one eternal gold coin was enough for a person to live extravagantly in Star Lake City. One could even stay in the God's Domain Association's high-end living quarters for a month. Ever since they moved into Star Lake City, their daily expenditure had increased significantly. It was especially so after Star Lake City became a second-tier city. But if they could develop in the Eternal Realm, not only could they earn enough money to cover their own living expenses, but they might also make enough to bring their families into Star Lake City. About a day later, a group of youths wearing Zero Wing's guild emblem appeared inside Zero Wing's residence in the Crystal City of Secrets. These youths looked astonished and curious as they took in their surroundings, their behavior making it seem as if this was their first time seeing the Eternal Realm. However, the appearance of these youths did not garner any attention from the players inside the residence. Ever since Zero Wing's residence got promoted into an advanced residence, many players have sought to join Zero Wing. In just one day, Zero Wing had gained an additional several tens of thousands of experts. Even the guild's fifth-floor experts had increased by more than 200. By now, Zero Wing had already become a first-class power in the Crystal City of Secrets. Meanwhile, after joining Zero Wing, these experts promptly got busy earning guild contribution points. So, even if someone noticed these youths were new faces, nobody could be bothered to spare them a second glance. The guild has already prepared all the designs and materials you need in your designated special forging rooms and special engineering rooms. The rest is up to you now, Shifeng said, smiling at the youths before him. For every component you successfully produce, the guild will reward you with 5,000 GCPs and 10 eternal gold coins. The gathered youths immediately gasped when they heard Shifeng's words. The youths who were more knowledgeable about the Eternal Realm were especially astonished by Shifeng's generosity. In the current Eternal Realm, a titled expert would be considered wealthy if they had 1 eternal gold in their possession. As for fifth-floor experts, most of them would only have several eternal gold in savings. Yet, Zero Wing was now offering each of them 10 eternal gold for every component they produced. If they managed to produce several components, they could instantly become wealthy players in the Eternal Realm, and their expenses in Star Lake City would no longer be a concern. Alright, head off to your respective workshops. As for you, Flaming Bell, come with me, Shifeng said before taking Flaming Bell, also known as Hualing, to one of the guild hall's underground secret rooms. Zero Wing's guild hall had become much bigger after being upgraded into an advanced guild hall. However, the place with the densest mana and eternal energy remained the rooms surrounding the core secret room, which housed the guild's core magic array. To take full advantage of this situation, Shifeng turned 2 of these rooms into a special forging room and a special private room, and the environment found inside these rooms was far superior to the average special-ranked room. When Flaming Bell stepped inside the special forging room, she was immediately stunned by the room's environment. Whether it was the room's mana or eternal energy, both were at least twice as dense as what could be found outside. Simply standing inside the special forging room made her feel as if she had ascended to a higher plane of existence. While Flaming Bell was immersed in the feeling of omniscience, Shifeng took out a thick and heavy tome from his bag. Meanwhile, the tome was none other than the Eternal Magic Armor equipment set design he had acquired from the Holy Race. Take a look at this and see what kind of success rates you can achieve, Shifeng said in a serious tone as he pointed at the tome on the forging table. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3567, Chapter 641, Skylight Association. Chapter 3567, Chapter 641, Skylight Association. Chapter 641, Skylight Association. This is a fragmented legendary battle array equipment set? Flaming Bell was greatly shocked when she started studying the Eternal Magic Armor's design. Although young, her knowledge of God's domain was comparable to that of executives of upper-ranking hegemonic powers. Originally, she thought that with Zero Wing being a new guild, its foundation should be inferior to the various upper-ranking hegemonic powers, and the guild would be amazing if it even owned an epic equipment set design. After all, mainstream players in the current Greater God's Domain were only geared in a full suit of epic weapons and equipment, and only the elite members of the various powers would get to use epic equipment sets. As for fragmented legendary items, these were items reserved for only a small number of elites. There might be many titled experts in the Eternal Realm, but there still weren't many players with fragmented legendary items. Most titled experts could only dream of owning a fragmented legendary equipment set, let alone fragmented legendary equipment sets that came with battle arrays. Honestly, in the current Greater Gods domain, if any upper-ranking hegemonic power could get its hands on 20 fragmented legendary equipment sets that could be used to form a small bronze battle array, they would immediately regard these equipment sets as one of their most prized possessions. What do you think? How likely are you to succeed in producing it? Shifeng asked when he saw that Flaming Bell had finished studying the design. Shifeng dared not act recklessly with the Eternal Magic Armor's production. After all, each production attempt cost 6 Eternal God Crystals. Even if he had over 10,000 Eternal God Crystals right now, he still couldn't afford to mess around. If Flaming Bell's production success rate was too low, he would rather delay the set's production. 50%. Flaming Bell answered tentatively after giving the matter some thought. That is my current limit. But if I can work in this environment, I am confident I can become a great Grandmaster Forger in 3 months. My success rate should reach 90% or more at that time, whether it was the opportunity to produce the Eternal Magic Armor or the opportunity to work in this special forging room. She did not wish to give up any of them. However, she dared not lie, either, so she could only pray that Shifeng gave her a little bit more time. You can raise it to 90% in 3 months. Shifeng couldn't help but look at Flaming Bell in surprise. He didn't think the girl would be so talented, so much so that she would dare to promise she could get promoted into a great Grandmaster Forger in 3 months. It should be known that great Grandmaster Forgers were regarded as big shots, even in the Greater Gods domain. Although their status was not as lofty as that of great Grandmaster Magicians, many upper-ranking hegemonic powers still sought to work with them. Not to mention, Flaming Bell's current production success rate had also exceeded his initial expectations by 10%. Okay, I'll leave the Eternal Magic Armor's production to you. All of the materials have already been prepared. For every set you successfully produce, you will receive 1,000 GCPs and 2 Eternal Gold Coins. If you can complete 500 sets in 15 days, you will receive an additional 50,000 GCPs and 100 Eternal Gold Coins. Thank you, Guild Leader. Flaming Bell grew ecstatic when she heard Shifeng's words. I won't let you down. I'll also make sure to produce 500 sets in 15 days. I won't take any payment if I fail to do it. Just make sure you study the design properly. It won't be easy to make 500 sets in 15 days, Shifeng said, chuckling. In reality, he had only set the goal of making 500 sets in 15 days as a way to motivate Flaming Bell. He didn't really expect her to achieve it. After all, even he could only barely accomplish such a task. Seeing as Flaming Bell wasn't even a great Grandmaster Magician yet, she would definitely need more time to engrave the equipment set's magic array. Of course, if Flaming Bell could achieve the goal, it would greatly help Zero Wing. After all, 500 Eternal Magic Armor equipment sets were already enough to fully activate the Eternal Battle Array, letting 500 Tier 5 players to rival Tier 6 players. At that time, Zero Wing should no longer have any problems defending its city on the Western continent. Shortly after Shifeng concluded his conversation with Flaming Bell, he suddenly received a call. Big Sis Chelene brought a group of people to the residence, Guild Leader. She says those people are from a guild called Skylight Association and that they wish to discuss something important with you, Gentle Snow said. Do you want to meet them? Ink Chelene brought someone here? Nodding, Shifeng said, all right, take them to the lounge. Ink Chelene was a vice commander of Scarecrow Fox. Meanwhile, Scarecrow Fox had been working closely with Zero Wing in the underground Crystal Palace during this period. Out of respect for their partnership, it would only be reasonable for him to meet with Ink Chelene's guests. Moreover, Shifeng was relatively knowledgeable about the Skylight Association. It was a very famous yet mysterious power in the Eternal Realm during his previous life. Its rise in the Eternal Realm was very sudden, and on the surface, it could even rival the 9 great pseudo-apex powers in strength. Its Templar Legion was especially famous. The Templar Legion consisted of 1,000 members. At its peak, every member was a Tier 6 titled expert or above. Every one of them also wielded a special power that allowed them to exhibit strength rivaling Tier 6 gods temporarily. When the Templar Legion moved as one, it was virtually unstoppable in the Eternal Realm. Overall, the Skylight Association could be considered one of the Greater Gods' Domain's latest overlords after the Eternal Realm's appearance. Zero Wing's residence, VIP Lounge. When Shifeng arrived at the lounge, he saw Inkchaline and River Light quietly seated on a magic stone sofa. Presently, they have reached level 169 and level 168, respectively. Meanwhile, seated across them was a grey-haired old man who looked to be in his 60s or 70s. Compared to Inkchaline and River Light, the old man was much higher in levels, reaching level 171 already. It was apparent that Inkchaline and River Light felt great pressure when facing the old man, as both had beads of sweat covering their foreheads. There were also about a dozen middle-aged men and women standing behind the old man. Not only were they all at level 170, but they were also experts who had climbed to the realm of saints. Placed in any upper-ranking hegemonic power, these individuals would definitely be given the position of elder. Yet, they now behaved like soldiers awaiting instructions as they stood behind the old man. Meanwhile, following Shifeng's appearance, these soldier-like middle-aged players simultaneously turned to look at him, their gazes sharp as knives. No wonder Miss Chaline has pushed Zero Wing so strongly to paradise. When the old man heard Shifeng entering the room, he opened his eyes and took a moment to scrutinize Shifeng. Then, he sighed and said, "Young people nowadays are truly amazing. You're only in your 30s, yet not only have you mastered gold combat techniques already, but your current strength even rivals true Tier 6 players. You're even more terrifying than Paradise when he was young." "You jest, Elder Sword. I am still far behind the Divine Spear," Shifeng said, immediately recognizing the grey-haired old man as 19th Sword, one of the Greater Gods' Domain's current 10 great swordsmen. In addition, the old man was also one of the few solo experts who had managed to be awarded a position among the 10 great swordsmen. As for the Paradise mentioned by the old man, he was the holder of the title Divine Spear, and he currently ranked among the top 10 of the Divine Glory list. "May I know what you have come to discuss on behalf of the Skylight Association, Elder Sword?" "Something good," 19th Sword said, chuckling. "Zero Wing's growth in the Eternal Realm is obvious to all, so the Skylight Association has sent me to invite Zero Wing to become a part of the Skylight Association. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 3568, Chapter 642, Mythical Race. Chapter 3568, Chapter 642, Mythical Race. Chapter 642, Mythical Race. Become a part of the Skylight Association? Shifeng wasn't particularly surprised to hear 19th Sword's words. Instead, he asked out of curiosity, "May I know what price the Skylight Association is willing to offer?" Many up-and-coming powers in the Greater Gods' Domain would receive invitations from the various major powers. Or more specifically, the various major powers saw potential in these up-and-coming powers and wished to make them into their subordinate powers. This was also one of the more common methods the Skylight Association had used to expand its influence in the Eternal Realm during his previous life. Meanwhile, Zero Wing's growth in the Crystal City of Secrets was clear for all to see. The guild's current influence in the city was completely different from before. So, it was only natural for some powers to be interested in making Zero Wing their subordinate. Only, what caught Shifeng by surprise was 19th Sword's appearance. 19th Sword was known for being a lone wolf in the Greater Gods' Domain, going so far as to turn down invitations from apex powers. Yet, now, not only did 19th Sword enter the Eternal Realm, but he had even joined the Skylight Association. This was something that did not happen during Shifeng's previous life. "Capital injection will naturally be essential," 19th Sword calmly said. "For starters, Skylight will invest 200 billion star coins and 1,000 drops of Stardew in Zero Wing. Then, it will progressively invest an additional 1 trillion star coins and 2,000 drops of stardew to help Zero Wing expand rapidly in the Crystal City of Secrets. Of course, these are only the basic investments. The real benefit for experts such as yourself will be an opportunity to convert into a mythical race. The Skylight Association can offer Zero Wing 100 of such conversion slots. In return, the Skylight Association seeks only 51% of Zero Wing's shares. I doubt you will need me to tell you how valuable the mythical races are, right? When 19th Sword finished speaking, the eyes of Ink Chalene and River Light immediately brightened. It was especially so when they heard the words mythical races. The existence of mythical races was akin to legend. The various races in the current Greater God's domain had only appeared after the mythical era. Or, more specifically, they were the descendants of the mythical era's races, and humans were no exception. Meanwhile, compared to the mythical era's races, even the elven and demi-dragon races, which were considered the most gifted among modern races, would be considered below average. For example, according to the Grand Library's records, the mythical era's elves were easily 10 times better at manipulating the various magic elements than modern elves due to the purity of their bloodline. They didn't even need to focus their minds to perceive the magic elements around them. Instead, they could see the various magic elements with their naked eyes. Another example would be the subdivisions of the human race, such as the Brave Ones and the Divine Eye race. Brave Ones possessed bodies that were nearly as tough as that of dragons, making them natural-born warriors. Meanwhile, members of the Divine Eye race possessed dynamic vision several times superior to normal humans, making them natural-born hunters. If they could convert to any of these mythical races, they could definitely achieve a qualitative improvement. They might also match, or possibly even surpass, Golden Masters in combat standards. Are you perhaps talking about Holy Ring City's mythical races, Elder Sword? Shifeng asked. The Greater God's domain's mythical races had long gone extinct, so it shouldn't be possible for anyone to convert to a mythical race. Even if it could be done, these methods should involve legacies left behind by ancient gods or primordial gods. Meanwhile, out of all possible avenues Shifeng could think of, the only way the Skylight Association could obtain 100 mythical race conversion slots currently would be through Holy Ring City, a neutral city situated in the Eternal Realm. It would also be one of the cities where all powers in the Greater God's domain sought to occupy. However, only a small number of powers could truly ever move into Holy Ring City. This was because human players weren't the only ones who could enter Holy Ring City. Holy Race players could similarly do so. But as Holy Ring City could only accommodate a limited number of players, only the guilds that managed to secure one of the city's 16 guild resident slots could let a fixed number of their members enter the city freely. As for everyone else, they would need to obtain an entry slot via the World Arc. The World Arc was a super-large level 170 to level 200 world mode regional dungeon. It was situated incredibly far from any NPC city, and all players and powers could go there to compete for the opportunity to enter Holy Ring City. It wasn't something the Skylight Association could monopolize. It seems you are very well informed, Guild Leader Black Flame, 19th Sword said, a hint of surprise flashing in his eyes. Then, he confidently continued, indeed, I am referring to Holy Ring City's mythical races. Many pseudo-apex powers have already set their sights on Holy Ring City. Many holy race powers will also be participating in the competition. So, ordinary powers shouldn't even consider participating in the competition, let alone exchange for the right to convert to a mythical race. If Zero Wing wants any conversion slots, joining the Skylight Association will be essential. Otherwise, with Zero Wing's current strength, even stepping into the World Arc will not be possible. If that's all the Skylight Association has to offer, I'm afraid I will have to disappoint you, Elder Sword, Shifeng said, chuckling as he looked at 19th Sword's confident look. Skylight's offer is a little too low for Zero Wing to accept. Low? When 19th Sword saw Shifeng's nonchalant expression, he smiled and asked, young man, do you know how intense the competition at the World Arc is? Not even the Crystal City's various pseudo-apex powers can guarantee they can secure 10 conversion slots, let alone 100. If you refuse this offer today, You will definitely come to regret your decision in the future. Regret? Chuckling, Shifeng said, it's just 100 conversion slots. That's not enough for me to feel regretful. Holy Ring City's mythical race conversion slots were indeed precious, but they were insignificant compared to the resources he currently had on hand. Not to mention, his aim wasn't merely the mythical race conversion slots, but also Holy Ring City itself. Meanwhile, silence enveloped the lounge following Shifeng's statement. His words especially shocked Inkchelin and Riverlight. Madness. Absolute madness. By now, they had already more or less heard about the situation at the World Ark. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was a place only pseudo-apex powers and above could set foot into. While Zero Wing might be a dominant force in the Crystal City of Secrets, it remained insignificant compared to the powers vying for Holy Ring City. Now that Shifeng had turned down 19th Sword's invitation, Zero Wing might not even be able to enter the World Ark, let alone Holy Ring City. After all, 19th Sword was responsible for overseeing the Skylight Association's affairs at the World Ark. So long as 19th Sword gave the word, any Zero Wing member would be killed on sight if they set foot into the regional dungeon. Most importantly, to prevent the various holy race powers from monopolizing the World Ark's resurrection camps, the various human powers had agreed to join forces and wrestle control over these camps when they activated in 4 days. If Zero Wing couldn't get a share of these resurrection camps, its members would face significantly greater difficulty exploring the World Ark. Good. Youngsters nowadays are much bolder than my time. Standing up, 19th Sword took one last look at Shifeng and said, I hope Zero Wing can still be so tough 4 days later. After saying so, 19th Sword left with his entourage, showing no intention of staying any longer. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3569, Chapter 643, Activating the Medium World Fragment. Chapter 3569, Chapter 643, Activating the Medium World Fragment. Chapter 643, Activating the Medium World Fragment. You really shouldn't have reacted so impulsively, Guild Leader Black Flame, Inkchelin said worriedly to Shifeng after seeing 19th Sword leave. The Skylight Association is very powerful in the Eternal Realm, even the various pseudo-apex powers are wary of it. Not to mention, Elder Sword is known for his arrogance. Now that Zero Wing has rejected his buyout offer, he is bound to target Zero Wing at the World Ark. 19th Sword had rejected all of the invitations he had received from the various apex powers thus far, so it was a huge deal for him to join a non-apex power like the Skylight Association. Yet, when he came in person to make Zero Wing a buyout offer on the Skylight Association's behalf, he had faced such an outright rejection. With his prideful personality, there was no way he would let this slight go. Not to mention, the World Ark was a high-level world mode regional dungeon that was bound to be the focus of the various players and powers in the future. At that time, there wouldn't be just one city's worth of players and powers competing over the map, but many cities instead. There were also the Holy Race's various players and powers. Although Zero Wing currently already had over 100,000 members and over 200 fifth-floor experts, such numbers were nothing in the competition over the World Ark. If Zero Wing wanted to thrive in the regional dungeon, the wisest choice would be to partner with the Skylight Association. Don't worry, Vice Commander Chelin, Shifeng said, chuckling. The current Zero Wing is no longer the same as before. The Skylight Association is not worthy of Zero Wing's fear. The Skylight Association indeed grew to an extraordinary extent during his previous life. But the current Zero Wing similarly shouldn't be underestimated, either. Not to mention, even with the limited resources he had during his previous life, he still managed to fight Demon's Gate, an apex power, to a standstill. So, why should he be afraid of a non-apex power like the Skylight Association? If you feel that the mana purification technique is sufficient as a trump card, I advise you to reconsider, Guild Leader Black Flame, Inkchelin said, wryly smiling when she heard Shifeng's nonchalant response. I don't know how, but the Skylight Association has also managed to secure many copies of the mana purification technique for its elites. This is also how the Skylight Association has thrived at the World Ark. Skylight has also acquired many copies. Shifeng was a little surprised to hear this. He found it hard to believe that an up-and-coming power like the Skylight Association could get its hands on many copies of the mana purification technique. In the current Eternal Realm, only the various apex powers should be able to get their hands on a considerable amount. As for Zero Wing, it had only gotten lucky and secured a large number from the Nameless City. In short, be careful of Skylight, Guild Leader Black Flame, Inkchaline said cautiously. There is no way Skylight is an ordinary existence. Despite the various apex powers offering various resources to recruit him, Elder Sword still turned down all of their offers. Yet, Skylight has somehow managed to convince him to join. Moreover, it isn't just Elder Sword. According to Scarecrow Fox's intelligence, many of the Greater Gods Domain's top adventurer teams and famous individuals have also joined Skylight. Skylight's forces have also killed several of the 9 great pseudo-apex powers legions at the World Arc already, and these were legions led by Vice Guild leader individuals we are talking about. Nobody knows exactly how powerful the Skylight Association is right now. Thank you for your reminder, Vice Commander Chaline, Shifeng said gratefully. I will take note of this. Okay. I still have to take care of the Great Commander's mission, so I'll be taking my leave as well, Inkchaline said, nodding before leaving Zero Wing's residence with River Light. Meanwhile, a moment after Inkchaline and River Light left, Gentle Snow stepped into the lounge. Should we head to the World Arc with Azure Shadows Group in 4 days, Guild Leader? Gentle Snow suggested. The 9 great pseudo-apex powers were second to only the various apex powers. Meanwhile, their legions led by Vice Guild leader-level individuals were so strong they could survive against even Divine Glory experts. Yet, the Skylight Association had managed to kill multiple such legions. No need. Let them focus on preparing for their test, Shifeng said, shaking his head. If we want to stand out in the Eternal Realm, it is best if we rely on ourselves. How's the secret room's renovation coming along? The barrier has been set up as you requested. Not even Tier 6 experts should think of breaking it in a short time, Gentle Snow answered with a look of curiosity. She couldn't understand why Shifeng would ask to erect such a powerful barrier for a single room. The barrier was already strong enough to protect the average city. It's done already. Shifeng smiled when he heard Gentle Snow's answer. In that case, have Soul's group gather there in an hour. The same goes for you. Why are we gathering there? I don't think it will be necessary if we're gathering for a sparring session. Gentle Snow asked in confusion. After learning the advanced bronze purification technique, everyone is busy trying to master world laws. Many of them are also very close to mastering a law already. Shifeng couldn't help but chuckle when he heard Gentle Snow's concerns. Then, he said, naturally, it is to help you all master more laws. Of course, I won't object if you all decide you don't want this opportunity. I can always enjoy it by myself. Master more laws? Gentle Snow was momentarily stunned. Really? World laws played a vital role in determining a divine body's completion rate and strength. The more world laws a player mastered, the higher their divine body's completion rate and strength would be. In reality, many of Zero Wing's executive members could already get promoted to Tier 6. But they all had great ambitions, so they wished to make more progress in world laws before creating their divine body and getting promoted to Tier 6. But mastering world laws was not an easy task. Apart from gaining assistance from various legacies, they could only rely on themselves to comprehend and experiment. Of course. When have I ever lied to you? Shifeng said, chuckling. Hurry up and notify the others. Okay. I'll go and inform them right away. Gentle Snow said hurriedly. Also, you're not allowed to monopolize this opportunity, Guild Leader. While Gentle Snow left to contact Hidden Soul and Zero Wing's other executives, Shifeng made his way to the secret room protected by a large Grandmaster magic barrier. The secret room was the size of a football field, and it was more than enough to accommodate the activities of over 100 players. It's all up to you now. After arriving in the secret room, Shifeng took out the medium world fragment from his bag. Then, he injected a god crystal into the fist-sized void fragment. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., Please let us know report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3570 Chapter 644 World Law Paradise. Chapter 3570 Chapter 644 World Law Paradise. Chapter 644 World Law Paradise. When the God crystal merged with the medium world fragment, wisps of silver-grey mist emanated from the fist-sized void fragment and spread across the room like ripples across a pond. In only a few moments, dense mist filled the entire room, darkening the room. Meanwhile, standing amidst the darkness, Shifeng couldn't help but be astonished by the unprecedented experience he was currently experiencing. More specifically, he could currently see everything in his surroundings with incredible clarity, particularly the magic elements around him. In God's domain, players' perception of the various magic elements would increase and decrease with the mana density. Yet, even though the room's mana density remained the same as before, his perception of magic elements had undergone a qualitative transformation. Are these the effects of a medium world fragment? Shifeng was greatly shocked as he looked at the countless magic elements moving around him. The level of his mana affinity already ranked at the top of the greater God's domain, but even then, it only allowed him to vaguely see the movements of the magic elements around him. In comparison, after activating the medium world fragment, not only could he see the surrounding magic elements with great clarity, but even their movements had seemingly slowed down by a lot. The magic elements in God's domain moved at great speeds. Even with level 6 mana affinity, he could normally only catch glimpses of a magic element's movement. Observing a magic element move was no different than observing a shooting star for him. So, one could just imagine how challenging it would be to analyze a world law that was weaved by countless magic elements. This was also why, despite there being countless experts in the greater God's domain, saint-ranked experts remained exceedingly rare. But, at this time, Shifeng found the movements of the magic elements around him had slowed down by more than half. This made it many times easier to observe and analyze the world laws they weaved. While Shifeng marveled at the medium world fragment's amazing effects, over a dozen Zero-Wing members entered the secret room. Apart from Gentle Snow, there was Hidden Soul, Su Qianliu, Wordless Ember, Sleeping Quicksand, Rampant Blade, Wu Xiaoxiao, Midsummer, Fire Dance, Jun Luosho, Firecloud, Happy Snow, Lin Yaoyu, Zhui Yarlin, Crimson Heart, and Cleansed Rue. Lin Yaoyu, Zhui Yarlin, Crimson Heart, and Cleansed Rue were originally members of Mysterious Moon and 100 Flower Palace. But ever since Zero-Wing became the miniature ancient world's overlord and brought many of the Azura Mercenary Alliance's executives into the Eternal Realm, many of the Mercenary Alliance's guilds had chosen to merge into Zero-Wing. Among them were Mysterious Moon and 100 Flower Palace. Shifeng naturally welcomed the addition of the two first-rate guilds. It was especially so for the individuals Lin Yaoyu, Zhui Yarlin, Crimson Heart, and Cleansed Rue. All four of them possessed exceptional talent, and it was especially so for Crimson Heart and Cleansed Rue. During Shifeng's previous life, Cleansed Rue's fame was on par with Gentle Snow, being one of their God's domain's 4 goddesses. After entering the greater God's domain, she even became a saint-ranked expert who had mastered 3 basic laws. She was only short of merging the 3 basic laws into an advanced law. Unfortunately, due to 100 Flower Palace's lacking foundations, Cleansed Rue ended up having her potential restricted. Had 100 Flower Palace been as strong as an upper-ranking hegemonic power and provided Cleansed Rue with a full set of legendary equipment, she could have rivaled Tier 6 gods in strength. As for Crimson Heart, 100 Flower Palace's first vice-guild leader, her achievements were even more extraordinary than Cleansed Rue. Firstly, she managed to develop an exclusive absolute technique that rivaled gold combat techniques. Secondly, with a full set of legendary items, she managed to force a Tier 6 god into retreating after fighting for an entire day, which, in turn, allowed 100 Flower Palace to occupy an ancient ruin in the Void Sea. Originally, Shifeng thought 100 Flower Palace would remain only as Zero-Wing's ally like in his previous life. He never thought that Crimson Heart would somehow manage to persuade Shadow Flower, 100 Flower Palace's mysterious guild leader, to incorporate 100 Flower Palace into Zero-Wing. Mysterious Moon's decision to merge into Zero-Wing did not surprise Shifeng at all. After all, Mysterious Moon was just your average first-rate guild. On the other hand, While 100 Flower Palace might be a first-rate guild on the surface, whether in quantity or quality, its experts could already rival super first-rate guilds. So long as 100 Flower Palace waited for their God's Domain's world passage to fully open and enter the greater God's Domain, it would be akin to an aquarium shark returning to the ocean. It would quickly grow into an ordinary hegemonic power in the greater God's Domain, and it might even have hopes of rivaling upper-ranking hegemonic powers in the future. Hence, Shifeng was very much surprised by 100 Flower Palace's addition to Zero Wing. But since 100 Flower Palace had already merged into Zero Wing, he naturally had to make full use of Crimson Heart's and Cleansed Rue's potential. What is this place? I can actually perceive the movements of magic elements here, Cleansed Rue exclaimed as soon as she stepped into the secret room. Cleansed Rue had been repeatedly shocked by Zero Wing's strength since 100 Flower Palace's merger into Zero Wing. In addition to having the ability to bring its guild members into the Eternal Realm, Zero Wing also had a frightening number of fifth-floor experts in the Eternal Realm. Compared to Zero Wing, the so-called 5 great super guilds of their God's Domain were nothing but jokes. Moreover, after joining Zero Wing, they also got to spar with the guild's fifth-floor experts daily, achieving rapid growth. Take Crimson Heart, for example. Right now, Crimson Heart was already a pseudo-fifth-floor expert, and it shouldn't be long before she became a bona fide fifth-floor expert. As for Cleansed Rue, she was a titled expert already, and she also shouldn't have any trouble achieving the fifth-floor standard in the future. Originally, Cleansed Rue thought she had already seen everything Zero Wing had to offer and that nothing else could shock her. But after entering this secret room, she realized that Zero Wing still had more shocking secrets she had yet to discover. Currently, getting promoted to Tier 6 was no longer a problem for her. The only problem was whether she could construct a divine body at the gold rank or above, which required her to master at least one basic world law. However, mastering a basic world law was easier said than done. To accomplish such a feat, not only did players need to have sufficient legacy guidances, but they also needed to fully familiarize themselves with the movements of the various magic elements. If there was even a slight error in their analysis and manipulation, they would never succeed at mastering a world law. Meanwhile, players in God's Domain could normally only rely on their senses to perceive the movement of magic elements. It was impossible to do so with the naked eye. Yet, not only was it possible to see magic elements moving in this secret room, but the movement of the room's magic elements was also much slower than normal. This secret room was essentially a paradise for mastering world laws. At this time, Cleansed Rue wasn't the only one in shock. Gentle Snow, Hidden Snow, and everyone else was similarly stunned. They never thought they would get to observe world laws under such circumstances. The benefits of the environment here are self-explanatory. However, I can only keep it active for a limited time, so make use of it while it lasts, Shifeng suddenly said as he swept his gaze across the dazed individuals before him. The guild has also prepared sufficient 7 luminaries crystals for all of you. If you decide you are ready to get promoted to Tier 6, you can retrieve your share from the guild warehouse at any time. After saying so, Shifeng distributed some Eternal God crystals to everyone before leaving them to their own devices. As for how much they could achieve in this secret room, it was all up to their individual potential. While everyone was busy analyzing world laws, Shifeng made his way to a corner of the room and took out a golden heart from his bag. Let's hope I can get something out of this. After making a silent prayer, Shifeng injected 5 million units of 7 luminaries crystal into the primordial chaos body. TL notes: 1. Lin Yaoyu equals clear sky, Zhua Yalin equals nightingale. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3571, Chapter 645, Superior Divine Body. Chapter 3571, Chapter 645, Superior Divine Body. Chapter 645, Superior Divine Body. Starlight Continent, First Tier Mobile City, Galaxy City. A plane measuring over 10,000 meters in length was currently parked above the city's airport, dwarfing the many supersonic passenger planes traveling to and away from the city. Needless to say, the gigantic plane attracted the attention and shock of many in the airport. The greater world was composed of numerous continents. For the average person, they would usually never leave the city they resided in, let alone travel to a different continent. But for those looking to travel to other continents, supersonic passenger planes were no longer sufficient. Instead, FTL, faster than light, passenger planes would be required. However, FTL passenger planes were incredibly costly, and only the various conglomerates could afford to own such planes. Even then, they would be limited to owning only a few, and they would normally only use these planes for their own development purposes. Outsiders shouldn't think of hitching a ride on a conglomerate's FTL plane. Yet, the group of people that had just alighted from the FTL plane clearly weren't here on official business. Judging by their varying casual attires, they were evidently tourists who had come to visit the Starlight continent. It also didn't seem like they had flown here using their own organization's exclusive FTL plane. This was a level of extravagance that even the Galaxy conglomerate had never done before, so how could Galaxy City's inhabitants not react in shock? Meanwhile, walking among the tourists were about a dozen or so young men and women. These youths were akin to well-trained warriors, each giving off an astonishing presence. After arriving at Galaxy City, these youths promptly started to scrutinize the city around them, gathering as much information as they could with their eyes. When these youths walked along the streets of Galaxy City, many passers-by subconsciously turned to look at them. After all, not only did these youths possess sharp temperaments, but every one of them was also a 3-star mental strength grandmaster. Even in a first-tier city like Galaxy City, experts of such caliber remained incredibly rare. Not to mention, walking in the lead of these youths was a middle-aged man whose mere presence suffocated even nearby mental strength grandmasters. This is such a backwater place. Whether it is in development or energy density levels, this city can't even compete with our continent's second-tier cities, a tall young woman said, a hint of disdain flashing in her eyes as she surveyed the city around her. Are we really going to develop in that so-called Star Lake City from now on, Big Brother Samsara? Their group operated a mercenary unit in the real world under fervent Samsara's leadership. Even among the greater god's domain's 12 sanctuaries, their mercenary unit was rather well known, and many conglomerates would usually hire them to fight against other powers. So, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that their mercenary unit thrived in the 12 sanctuaries. Although they recently had to put their mercenary activities on hold because fervent Samsara got dragged into the Eternal Realm by chance, they could promptly resume their activities once the Eternal Realm's coordinates were found. Yet, even though the Eternal Realm's coordinates had yet to be discovered, fervent Samsara had suddenly gathered them together and insisted they move to a backwater place like the Starlight continent to develop. On top of that, they wouldn't even be operating from one of the Starlight continent's first-tier cities. Instead, they would be setting up base in a newly promoted second-tier city. No matter how they racked their minds, they simply couldn't understand why fervent Samsara would make such a decision. I already told you that I won't force you if you don't want to come. Since you're here already, stop asking questions, fervent Samsara sternly said as he glanced at the youths behind him. I still can't tell you why I am moving into Star Lake City. But if you join Zero Wing later, I will ask the guild leader if I can share this information with you. The primordial chaos body. This was an item primordial gods used to construct their divine bodies. Although Shafeng never explicitly mentioned it, fervent Samsara knew he must never share this secret with a third party, even if it was someone he deeply trusted. After all, even the slightest information leak could bring about disaster to them. I didn't mean to question your decision, Big Brother Samsara, the young woman hurriedly said when she saw fervent Samsara suddenly becoming stern. But we all have families that rely on us for money and resources. We're just worried we can't continue to provide for our families if we suddenly join Zero Wing. The other youths in the group agreed with the young woman's words. Every member of their mercenary unit came from a small family. Their families had to go through great effort to nurture them to their current states, so it was only natural that they repaid their debt now that they had become capable experts. But it cost a lot of money and resources to let their family members live in first-tier cities. If joining Zero Wing negatively affected their income, they might lose the ability to support their families. Not to mention, they had gone through a lot of trouble to develop their mercenary unit to its current prosperous state. For them to join an up-and-coming guild, which they had never even heard about until recently, would be no different than having them start all over again. The hardships they had experienced in the past really weren't something they wished to go through another time. "Don't worry. When have I mistreated you all?" Fervent Samsara said, chuckling when he saw everyone's worried looks. "If you join Zero Wing with me, I guarantee you'll be better off than you are now." The current Zero Wing might seem like it was still an upstart power with an uncertain future, but Fervent Samsara was certain Zero Wing would eventually become a major player in the greater God's domain. It might even become a pseudo-apex power in the future. Meanwhile, the best time to join Zero Wing would naturally be when the guild was still starving for manpower. Of course, he couldn't just join Zero Wing by himself. If he wished to step into Zero Wing's core circle and hold influence in the guild, he would need more people to help him. Crystal City of Secrets, Zero Wing's residence, underground secret room. After Shifeng injected 5 million units of 7 luminaries crystal into the primordial chaos body, divine patterns lit up all over the golden heart. Immediately afterward, segments of information flooded his mind, making him feel as if his brain was about to explode. After this situation continued for nearly half an hour, the primordial chaos body finally stopped transmitting information. Meanwhile, Shifeng's face was pale and sweated profusely. Yet, despite looking clearly exhausted, excitement filled his eyes. "Incredible. I didn't think the primordial chaos body would hold such a legacy. No wonder the primordial gods would create their divine bodies with the help of primordial chaos bodies," Shifeng mentally exclaimed as he watched the Golden Heart's divine patterns fade out of existence. In God's domain, all players seeking to get promoted to Tier 6 needed to construct a divine body suited to them. Meanwhile, players could construct 2 types of divine bodies: ordinary divine bodies and superior divine bodies. However, this was a secret most players weren't privy to, and it was something Shifeng had only come across by luck during his previous life. In the current God's domain, whether it was players or gods, the divine bodies they created were only divine bodies. Only primordial gods and a small number of ancient gods had constructed a superior divine body for themselves. This was also why there was such a huge difference in strength between the two groups. During his previous life, Shifeng had only gotten the opportunity to construct a superior divine body because of a primordial god legacy he obtained. Different from ordinary divine bodies, superior divine bodies could not be constructed without the guidance of a legacy. Even if he had experience constructing a superior divine body, he couldn't construct one without the necessary legacy. Originally, he thought he would not get to construct a superior divine body in this life, and the most he could achieve was construct an ordinary divine body that was at the legendary rank. After all, the opportunity he had come across in his previous life was not something that could be actively sought after. But now, he actually had another chance to construct a superior divine body. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3572, Chapter 646, Divine Body of Legends. Chapter 3572, Chapter 646, Divine Body of Legends. Chapter 646, Divine Body of Legends. I didn't think I would get another chance to create a superior divine body. The 5 million units of 7 luminaries crystal were really well spent. After calming his emotions, Shifeng started to carefully analyze the new information in his brain. There were many different ways to construct a divine body, so even though he had experience constructing a superior divine body, he couldn't treat the matter with light regard. Meanwhile, from what he gathered after briefly looking through the information he received, the guidance provided by the primordial chaos body was most certainly different from the guidance he received from the primordial god legacy in his previous life. For starters, the primordial god legacy in his previous life had provided him with step-by-step instructions on how to construct a specific superior divine body. All he needed to do was meet all the target requirements, and he would have himself a superior divine body. On the other hand, the primordial chaos body only provided him with a general method of creating a divine body. He would still need to complete the vital sections by himself. As for what kind of divine body he could create, it would depend on the world laws he had mastered. According to the primordial chaos body's legacy, the more world laws he mastered, the stronger his divine body would be. He could even construct a superior divine body if he had mastered a sufficient number of world laws. Of course, before aiming to construct a superior divine body, he would first need to deal with the basic portion of the primordial chaos body's divine body construction method, which would not be easy. When he created his superior divine body in his previous life, including the core magic arrays, he had to engrave over 1,000 Grandmaster magic arrays and manipulate them simultaneously. However, compared to the primordial god legacy's method of creating superior divine bodies, the primordial chaos body's method was even more astonishing. After glancing at the information provided by the primordial chaos body, he found that he needed to construct over 1,900 Grandmaster magic arrays just for his divine body's core. On top of that, he also had to construct some additional Grandmaster magic arrays at vital nodes situated across the divine body, and these nodal magic arrays numbered roughly 1/10 of the core magic arrays. After factoring in both types of magic arrays, he would need to construct over 2,000 Grandmaster magic arrays. Even at a rough estimate, the superior divine body construction method provided by the primordial chaos body was at least twice as complex as the step-by-step method he obtained from the primordial god legacy in his previous life. As if that wasn't enough, he also had to thoroughly research the magic arrays suggested by the primordial chaos body. Otherwise, he would not be able to merge the world laws he had mastered with his divine body and construct the nodal magic arrays. 1 hour. 10 hours. 30 hours. It was not until the evening of the next day that Shifeng withdrew from his mind. Sure enough, constructing a superior divine body of my own isn't going to be an easy task. If I wasn't already a great Grandmaster magician, the 7 luminaries crystals I spent would have been for nothing, Shifeng inwardly celebrated as he looked at the complete divine body magic array in his mind. The process of researching the 1,900 plus Grandmaster magic arrays wasn't particularly difficult. Any Grandmaster magician could do it with enough time. What made the process challenging was having the insight to tell that these Grandmaster magic arrays involved every basic world law in existence. Indeed, every basic world law in existence. The intricacy of the 1,900 plus Grandmaster magic arrays was simply unbelievable. It was common knowledge that when players constructed a divine body, it would be as if they were creating a miniature world within themselves. However, this miniature world would be an incredibly broken one, and it only existed to enable players to execute law projection. This was because the divine body players created only involved a small portion of the basic world laws that existed. It was also the same case with the superior divine body that Shifeng had created in his previous life. However, when Shifeng constructed the primordial chaos body's divine body magic array, he felt he was constructing a god's domain with complete basic laws. It was simply incredible. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the divine body template provided by the primordial chaos body was the most perfect divine body in existence. It did not require any additional magic arrays at all. So long as he used this divine body magic array to construct an ordinary divine body, its rank would definitely exceed the legendary rank. In fact, he might not even need to achieve a 90% completion rate to exceed the legendary rank. In that case, completing the 100 refinement mana body quest would be a piece of cake. As for constructing a superior divine body, that was also simple. So long as he merged an advanced law he had fully mastered with the divine body magic array, he would have himself a superior divine body. In his previous life, he was able to construct a superior divine body because of the law of destruction he had mastered. Or rather, the primordial god legacy's superior divine body was created based on the law of destruction. Thus, he would be able to construct the superior divine body so long as he mastered the law of destruction. The same was also true now. So long as he converted the law of destruction into the required nodal magic arrays and merged them with the divine body magic array, he would be able to immediately reclaim his previous life's achievements. However, as a great Grandmaster magician, Shifeng was also aware that he would be wasting the primordial chaos body if he did that. Unlike the primordial god legacy's divine body magic array, the primordial chaos body's divine body magic array was fully capable of adopting multiple advanced laws. Meanwhile, the more advanced laws he merged into the magic array, the more world power he could influence when he got promoted to Tier 6. Now that I have mastered all the foundational magic arrays, I should try merging the law of destruction and law of space with them. Hopefully, I have enough resources to fund my attempts. When Shifeng looked at the 7 luminaries crystals in his bag, he couldn't help but lose confidence. Although he wasn't looking to construct a divine body right away, if he wanted to operate the divine body magic array supplied by the primordial chaos body normally, he would need to supply it with 7 luminaries crystals. Or, more specifically, every time he attempted to merge the nodal magic arrays, he would need to spend 7 luminaries crystal to see if the divine body magic array could operate normally. While such experiments might not cost as much as it did to construct a divine body, each attempt would still require 50,000 units of 7 luminaries crystal. Normally, when a Grandmaster magician was looking to develop a new Grandmaster magic array, they were unlikely to succeed without making a few thousand attempts. Even great Grandmaster magicians would need at least several hundred attempts. Aside from the 10 million units of 7 luminaries crystal needed to fund Fervent Samsara's and Heavy Abyss's opportunity to experience the primordial chaos body, Shifeng only had a little more than 35 million units of 7 luminaries crystal remaining. Among them, he would have to save about 10 to 20 million units to fund the Tier 6 promotion of guild members. So, all in all, he didn't really have a lot of 7 luminaries crystals to waste. However, Shifeng didn't hesitate to proceed with his experiments. Right now, constructing a superior divine body was of the utmost importance. Everything else was secondary. Even if he ended up wasting all of his 7 luminaries crystals, he simply needed to obtain more. Following this, Shifeng used an Eternal God crystal and, under the Medium World Fragment's assistance, started converting the Law of Destruction and Law of Space into Grandmaster magic arrays to merge with the Divine Body magic array. 1 time. 2 times. 3 times. On the 3rd day after the Medium World Fragment was activated, quite a few people in the secret room started to joyfully prepare for their Tier 6 promotion. Shifeng, though, remained seated in his corner. Another failure. Shifeng felt as if he had gotten ahead of himself when he looked at the divine body magic array that had refused to operate normally even once. He had gone through hundreds of attempts in the past 2 days, expending over 20 million units of 7 luminaries crystal. However, not once did he manage to get the divine body magic array to operate normally. In other words, he couldn't settle for a defective product even if he wanted to. The difficulty of converting 2 advanced laws into magic arrays was far greater than he initially anticipated. Fortunately, as if the main god system had decided to take pity on him, on the next nodal magic array arrangement he tried, the moment he finished drawing the last magic array using the mana of the 7 luminaries crystals, the divine body magic array lit up brightly. It was a scene that had never occurred before in his past several hundred attempts, and it was evident that the divine body magic array could function normally already. TL notes. 1. The primordial god legacy mentioned here is referring to the legacy guidance that Shifeng had received via the ancient god's eye in the main story. However, as I have previously mentioned, the author never really offered much clarification in the main story, so I ended up assuming that ancient god and primordial god were the same thing. So, the ancient god's eye should actually be primordial god's eye instead, and the legacy guidance received from it is considered a primordial god legacy. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3573, Chapter 647, Challenging the Tier 6 Promotion. Chapter 3573, Chapter 647, Challenging the Tier 6 Promotion. Chapter 647, Challenging the Tier 6 Promotion. Did I get it right this time? Shifeng grew ecstatic when he saw the magic arrays on the magic array scroll lightening up. Currently, excluding the 10 million units he had to save, he had less than 15 million units of 7 luminaries crystals left to spend. However, if he continued with his experiments, Zero Wing might start to have trouble funding its members' Tier 6 promotion. There were many 5th floor experts in the current Zero Wing, and the guild's total member count even exceeded 100,000. However, unlike other guilds, because Zero Wing's sphere of activity in the Eternal Realm was limited to the Crystal City of Secrets, It had a very limited income of 7 luminaries crystals. If he were to spend all of Zero Wing's 7 luminaries crystals, the guild would have difficulties producing Tier 6 players in the foreseeable future. Fortunately, he had finally achieved success. With over 14 million units of 7 luminaries crystal remaining, Zero Wing should have no trouble affording its members Tier 6 promotion. Just when Shifeng was about to officially begin constructing his divine body, Hidden Soul suddenly approached him. "You're finally done with your work, guild leader," Hidden Soul hurriedly said when she saw that Shifeng had finally stopped drawing on magic array scrolls. "Had you continued working any longer, I might have had to interrupt you." Everyone had been focused on improving their mastery of the magic elements in the past 2 days. And because everyone's method of going about doing so was different, Hidden Soul did not dare to disturb Shifeng for fear of interrupting him at a critical moment and ruining all of his progress. "Did something happen?" Shifeng asked when he saw the mix of joy and anxiety on Hidden Soul's face. "Yes." After taking a deep breath, Hidden Soul explained, "Some time ago, Mu Huangwu messaged us saying that Azure Shadows Group has successfully passed Nightwatch City's test. They even monopolized the top 10 positions. But as a result, they became a hot topic in Nightwatch City, and quite a few powers have started to look into this situation. Mu Huangwu estimates that it won't be long before those powers find out about Zero Wing's involvement." "So, they've begun investigating already?" Shifeng wasn't particularly surprised by this piece of news. Smiling, he said, "Tell Mu Huangwu that he can leak some information. Just say that Zero Wing has sold some secret treasures to the Green God Corporation and allowed Azure Shadows Group to receive a huge boost in strength. Of course, make sure to do this covertly." Azure Shadows Group had experienced meteoric improvements during their training in Zero Wing. It was especially so after they received the advanced bronze mana purification technique. Although they weren't fully equipped with legendary items, they were already close to rivaling Tier 6 gods. And if they were to fight against the various upper-ranking hegemonic powers Tier 6 paragons, even if they were inferior to those paragons by 1 rank in combat standards, so long as those paragons hadn't learned a mana purification technique yet, they could achieve victory handily. Fortunately, due to the nature of secret treasures improving players' mana protection, they could be used as a cover to explain the abnormal mana strength of Azure Shadow and the others. As for the matter of Nightwatch City's various powers showing interest in this matter, it was something Shifeng had long anticipated. It was also something he had hoped would happen. It hadn't been long since Zero Wing had established itself in Star Lake City, so the guild was in urgent need of various resources and star coins. While Zero Wing could easily acquire these things if it sold its secret treasures to the Eternal Realm's various powers, Zero Wing would be funding its competition if it did that. It might be fine to sell a small portion, but if the numbers grew too large, Zero Wing's advantage in the Eternal Realm would diminish significantly. However, it would be a different story if Zero Wing sold its secret treasures to Star Lake City's neighboring cities. Most of the powers based in these neighboring cities didn't have any presence in the Eternal Realm. So, it wouldn't affect Zero Wing's influence to sell secret treasures to these powers. Moreover, if Zero Wing were to sell its secret treasures through the miniature ancient world, it could sell its secret treasures at a high price and avoid getting heavily taxed by trading via the Eternal Chamber of Commerce. Not to mention, Zero Wing could use these transactions to apply pressure on Silver Frost City, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. "I'll notify Elder Mu," Hidden Soul said, nodding. "Also, one more thing. The Skylight Association has officially moved into the Crystal City yesterday, and it has recruited 5 upper-ranking hegemonic powers and 23 of the city's top 30 adventurer teams. Right now, it should have over 300 fifth-floor experts and over 300,000 members under its command. Vice Commander Chelene has advised us to be careful and said that we should avoid the World Arc for the time being." What an extravagant move. Shifeng was a little surprised to hear Hidden Soul's report on the Skylight Association. Although he had long known that the Skylight Association was wealthy, he didn't think it would be to such an extent. Setting aside the 5 upper-ranking hegemonic powers, just recruiting 23 of the city's top 30 adventurer teams was a challenging task. After all, even when Zero Wing had offered these adventurer teams the opportunity to get their hands on mana purification techniques, none of them had taken the bait. The fact that these adventurer teams had agreed to join the Skylight Association must mean that Skylight had offered them a much more irresistible offer. The World Ark's resurrection camps are activating soon, guild leader. Should we go or not? Hidden Soul asked. She was aware of the conflict between Zero Wing and the Skylight Association. Now that the Skylight Association had recruited many experts in the Crystal City, if Zero Wing were to head to the World Ark to develop, a direct confrontation with the Skylight Association would be inevitable. Of course we're going. Why wouldn't we? Shifeng said, chuckling. The resurrection camps are crucial for development at the World Ark. If we miss this chance, it'll be difficult for us to catch up in the future. Now that some of our people have already started their Tier 6 promotion, wouldn't it be a waste not to compete? If that's the case, I'll go and get ready, Hidden Soul said, deciding to challenge her Tier 6 promotion right away. Currently, she had already mastered 2 basic laws thanks to the Medium World Fragment's help. Originally, she had planned to master a 3rd basic law before challenging her Tier 6 promotion. That way, she could construct an epic divine body with 100% certainty. But for the sake of the World Ark, she decided not to delay her Tier 6 promotion any longer. The Medium World Fragment's effects were admittedly astonishing, but it only allowed players to tap into the potential they had accumulated over time and achieve rapid growth. Once players exhausted their untapped potential, their growth would slow down significantly, and they would need significantly more time to achieve any notable growth. However, the current Eternal Realm was overflowing with opportunities, and time was an incredibly precious resource. If she were to delay her Tier 6 promotion for too long, she would miss out on many of these opportunities, effectively putting the cart before the horse. Okay, you go and do that, Shifeng said, not bothering to dissuade Hidden Soul from her decision. After all, he was fully aware that reaching Tier 6 was just the beginning. After Hidden Soul took her leave, Shifeng took out an Eternal God Crystal and absorbed it without hesitation. Then, he took out the Primordial Dragon Legacy Crystal he had obtained from Kalisha. Whether I succeed or fail, it all comes down to this. After taking one last look at the completed Divine Body Magic Array, Shifeng injected 100 Eternal God Crystals into the Primordial Dragon Legacy Crystal. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3574, Chapter 648 Choice of Divine Body. Chapter 3574, Chapter 648 Choice of Divine Body. Chapter 648, Choice of Divine Body. Zero Wing's residence, underground secret room. As soon as Shifeng finished injecting the 100 Eternal God Crystals, the Primordial Dragon Legacy Crystal promptly transformed into a red streak of light that flowed into the depths of his mind. Simultaneously, the scene before him transformed into a boundless darkness. A moment later, a golden dragon suddenly appeared amidst the darkness, the dragon's body measuring over 10,000 meters in length. Aside from having a titanic body, the golden dragon also radiated an aura so powerful that it easily surpassed any ancient god Shifeng had encountered thus far. In front of the golden dragon, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the average ancient god was a speck of dust. Simply the breaths of the golden dragon were enough to stir the mana within a several million-yard radius. And if the golden dragon exhaled strongly, its breath could most likely shatter the world barrier of a god's domain. You have one opportunity to receive my guidance, adventurer. What do you wish to learn from me? The golden dragon asked as it gazed upon Shifeng, its eyes looking like it could see through all of Shifeng's secrets. Esteemed golden dragon, may I ask that you let me experience this magic array that I have created? Shifeng asked as he looked at the golden dragon. Due to the 100 refinement mana body quest, he needed to construct a divine body at the legendary rank. Combined with his aim to construct a superior divine body, he naturally wouldn't dare to act recklessly. While the divine body magic array he created could function normally now, how strong the divine body would be exactly also remained unknown. If he wished to find out, he would need to construct a divine body with it and experience it for himself. Not to mention, even if he had a functioning divine body magic array on hand, it wasn't a guarantee that he could construct a divine body successfully. It might still be tolerable if he successfully constructed his divine body. At worst, he could abandon the opportunity to get promoted to Tier 6 and wait a month before challenging his Tier 6 promotion gain. But if he failed to create one, he would need to wait for several months before he could challenge his Tier 6 promotion again. Meanwhile, if the Primordial Dragon Legacy Crystal could let him experience the Divine Body Magic Array he created, he could get a rough estimate of what rank the superior Divine Body he created would end up at. Moreover, the experience should also increase his construction success rate. Of course, if the Primordial Dragon Legacy Crystal couldn't provide such guidance, he could still switch to a more extravagant method to test his Divine Body Magic Array. Simple. After taking a look at Shifeng's Divine Body Magic Array, the Golden Dragon held up one of its claws over Shifeng. Immediately, under the Golden Dragon's manipulation, Shifeng started to experience the process of constructing a divine body using his Divine Body Magic Array. The process was methodical and specific, from engraving the necessary magic arrays to the guidance of mana into the engraved magic arrays. Every step was also executed flawlessly and without any fanfare. When the divine body's construction ended, Shifeng felt himself becoming vastly stronger than before. If he were to return to the outside world in such a state, he could easily devastate a large area with his every move. But this feeling of power quickly disappeared, indicating the end of the legacy guidance. It's still slightly weaker than my last superior divine body. After carefully analyzing his experience, Shifeng felt that although his new superior divine body allowed him to exhibit strength much greater than he could exhibit in his previous life, it was mainly due to the mana purification technique he had mastered. Not to mention, the world power he felt the instant he completed his new superior divine body was slightly weaker than when he completed his former superior divine body. In other words, his new superior divine body's upper limit should be inferior to that of an epic superior divine body. Subsequently, after his consciousness returned to the secret room, Shifeng carefully made some minor adjustments to the nodal magic array's arrangement. Fortunately, the Divine Body Magic Array was also activated successfully this time. So, he promptly spent 100 Eternal God Crystals for another trial. According to Kalisha, the Primordial Dragon Legacy Crystal could be used up to 10 times, each use costing 100 God Crystals. So, he had 10 chances to try. Once he expended all 10 uses of the Legacy Crystal, he would need to conduct his experiments via actual construction attempts. And if he couldn't produce satisfactory results within a certain period of time, he would have no choice but to forego constructing a superior divine body and settle for an ordinary legendary divine body to complete his quest. Meanwhile, Shifeng was rather fortunate on his second attempt, as he constructed a superior divine body slightly stronger than the epic superior divine body in his previous life. The new superior divine body had evidently exceeded the epic standard already. However, for safety's sake, Shifeng still chose to expend all 10 legacy guidance opportunities, consuming 1,000 Eternal God Crystals in the process. This was a cost that could cause any power to suffer a heart attack. Only the second, fifth, and 10th attempts managed to surpass my past life's divine body. Shifeng couldn't help but grow hesitant as he looked at the 10 successful divine body magic arrays he had drawn. The outcome of his 10 attempts was better than he anticipated, as 3 of the 10 attempts had yielded a superior divine body stronger than what he had in his previous life. But what rank these 3 superior divine bodies could achieve remained uncertain. Because he could only experience each divine body for a brief instant after it was completed, there was very little information he could base his judgment on. Firstly, if he were to rank the 3 superior divine bodies by the world power he sensed, the 5th attempt would be the strongest, while the 10th attempt would rank second, and the second attempt would rank last. Though, in reality, the difference between the 3 was tiny. Secondly, if he were to judge the strength of their mana, the second attempt would be the strongest, while the 10th attempt would rank second, and the 5th attempt would rank last. The rankings were essentially flipped. Lastly, if he were to judge them by the density of their mana, the 10th attempt carried the densest mana, while the second and 5th attempts were tied for second place. It seems a gamble is inevitable. After hesitating for a moment, Shifeng decided to construct the 10th attempt's divine body. While the amount of world power influenced was a good indicator of a divine body's strength, Shifeng also understood that mana was the foundation of everything in God's domain. Furthermore, his understanding of his divine body magic array had grown with each passing attempt. This, in turn, allowed him to continuously perfect the magic array. Meanwhile, even the tiniest improvements were noteworthy when it came to divine body construction. Logically, no matter how bad his 10th attempt turned out to be, it shouldn't be worse than his first attempt. Not to mention, the 10th attempt's divine body possessed significantly denser mana than the 2nd and 5th attempts. It wasn't a minute difference like in the world power influenced. After making his decision, Shifeng followed the step-by-step instructions he learned through the primordial dragon legacy crystal and began earnestly engraving the divine body magic array with 7 luminaries crystals. And because he already had experience engraving the magic arrays, while he didn't manage to replicate the legacy guidance's perfection, he still managed to engrave all 2,000+ Grandmaster magic arrays without error. After Shifeng engraved the magic arrays, he took a few deep breaths to calm his nerves. Then, using the 2 advanced world laws he had mastered, he began guiding the 7 luminaries crystals mana into the divine body magic array, powering it and using it to create a complete miniature world. The process of guiding mana into the divine body magic array and activating it was much more challenging than the engraving process. Not only was it more time-consuming, but it also placed a huge toll on his concentration and tested his control over mana. Had Shifeng attempted to manipulate the 2,000+ Grandmaster magic arrays with his base Tier 6 advanced concentration, he would have definitely failed. But with the help of an Eternal God crystal and the mental condensation technique, he managed to elevate his concentration to the Tier 6 peak standard, which was just barely enough to let him manipulate the 2,000+ Grandmaster magic arrays. As a result, though, he felt as if he was crossing a log bridge while carrying 1,000 kilograms on his back. He would slip and fall if he let his focus slip for even a moment. 1 minute. 3 minutes. 10 minutes. After manipulating the Grandmaster magic arrays for over 10 minutes, even with the help of the Eternal God crystal, Shifeng still exhausted himself to his limits. The system had even warned him to log off and rest as soon as possible. Almost. Just one last step. Shifeng bit his tongue to keep himself conscious. If he were to fall unconscious here, all his efforts would have gone to waste. The advantages he had accumulated in the Eternal Realm would also vanish. Fortunately, most of the Divine Body's core magic arrays had already been activated, and there were only 5 more to go. 5. 4. 3. Just as Shifeng was about to black out, the sound of a system notification rang in his ears. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3575, Chapter 649, Star Soul. Chapter 3575, Chapter 649, Star Soul. Chapter 649, Star Soul System. Congratulations. You have successfully constructed a superior divine body. The constructed superior divine body's completion rate is at 96% and has reached the Tier 6 standard. The constructed superior divine body is evaluated to be at the legendary rank. Do you wish to get promoted to Tier 6? Legendary? Shifeng was both shocked and pleasantly surprised when he saw the system notification. He didn't think he would actually make the right choice. System. Warning. Your concentration has fallen to a dangerous level. You will be forcibly logged out and prohibited from logging in for 12 hours. Promote. When Shifeng noticed his vision gradually darkening, he chose to be promoted to Tier 6 without hesitation. Once players finished constructing their divine bodies in God's domain, if they couldn't decide whether they wanted to be promoted to Tier 6 within a few minutes, the system would assume they didn't wish to be promoted by default. Meanwhile, once players abandoned the opportunity to get promoted to Tier 6, not only would they need to spend another 100,000 units of 7 luminaries crystal when they wished to be promoted in the future, but they would also have to wait for a month before they could challenge their Tier 6 promotion again. In the ever-changing Eternal Realm, a month's time was enough for any expert to be disqualified from the front lines. Not to mention, only by reaching Tier 6 could players truly start to explore the Eternal Realm's many vital regions. Currently, Many powers already had experts who were qualified to get promoted to Tier 6. The only reason they still didn't have any Tier 6 players was because they feared their experts might encounter failure during their promotion. After all, the penalty for a failed promotion was many times more severe than the penalty for abandoning a successful promotion. Hence, the various powers forbade any of their experts from challenging their Tier 6 promotion until they were 100% confident in success. Meanwhile, after Shifeng gave his response, he promptly logged out of God's domain. Star Lake City, Zero Wing Training Center, top floor living quarter. After climbing out of his gaming cabin, Shifeng dragged his exhausted body over to the fridge, took out a small bottle, and consumed the drop of stardew inside. Immediately, his tired expression started to recover. Now, all that's left is to hope Snow and the others can succeed, Shifeng thought as he looked out the window at the long line of people waiting outside the Zero Wing Training Center. Although Zero Wing had acquired unimaginable wealth from the Nameless City's treasury, most of this wealth couldn't be used immediately. Meanwhile, Zero Wing had recruited many guild members in both Star Lake City and the Eternal Realm's Crystal City of Secrets recently. This, in turn, had increased Zero Wing's expenditure significantly. It was especially so on Star Lake City's side. Currently, members recruited in the Crystal City of Secret could enjoy all of the benefits Zero Wing had to offer. They even had fifth-floor experts leading them on expeditions to the underground Crystal Palace and dungeons out in the fields. They didn't have to worry about money or equipment in the slightest. In comparison, as most of the internal members recruited in Star Lake City were scattered across the Starlight Realm's various kingdoms and empires, Zero Wing couldn't even offer them a proper place to train in God's domain, let alone provide them with a stable supply of weapons and equipment. To make matters worse, most of them were only Tier 4 players. For the sake of developing these internal members, Zero Wing had no choice but to purchase items from the Eternal Chamber of Commerce at a high price before letting these members exchange for these items at a low price. With the revenue Zero Wing was currently generating via the secret crystal trading firm and the sale of common secret treasures, it could still afford to provide for a few thousand internal members using such a method. But as Zero Wing's internal member count continued to increase, it would need to further increase its income. Meanwhile, if Zero Wing wished to make more money to sustain its development, securing territory in the World Arc would become imperative. The World Arc was the only place players could reliably obtain entry passes for the Holy Ring City. But if players died in the World Arc, they would be automatically resurrected in a nearby NPC city's resurrection temple, and they would need to spend more than 10 hours traveling back to the regional dungeon. So, exploring the World Arc could be said to be a very troublesome task. Of course, the World Arc's automatic resurrection problem wasn't without a solution. There were many resurrection camps in the World Arc. If players occupied and registered themselves at one of these camps, they would be automatically resurrected at the registered camp if they died inside the World Arc. Not only would this save them a lot of travel time, but they could also halve their death penalty. Because of this, the resurrection camps were essential for players looking to explore the World Arc. Meanwhile, so long as a power could occupy a resurrection camp, even if they only charged players a fee of 1 eternal silver a day, they could still make a fortune. In Shifeng's previous life, if powers managed their resurrection camps well, they could stand to make 2 to 3 fortresses worth of revenue from each resurrection camp. Moreover, these were fortresses situated on high-level maps they were talking about. The only problem was whether a power could occupy a resurrection camp for a long period. Unlike towns, cities, and fortresses, the World Arc's resurrection camps had no defensive facilities. Players could only rely on themselves to defend their resurrection camps from invaders. Meanwhile, as the Holy Ring City was of utmost importance to both human and holy race powers, it went without saying that competition over the World Arc's resurrection camp would be intense, so much so that it could be equated to a realm war. If a power didn't have sufficient strength, occupying a resurrection camp would be out of the question. While Shifeng was resting his mind, Pace Angel suddenly contacted him. Guild leader, a man going by the name of Fervent Samsara, says he is here to join the guild. He came with a group of roughly 20 people. He says he already has Vice Guild Leader Soul's approval, Pace Angel said. But I can't get in touch with Vice Guild Leader Soul right now. Should I register them? That's quick of him. Shifeng was a little surprised to hear Fervent Samsara's name. Immediately, he said, "Go ahead and register them. Afterward, have them come to my office." Shifeng had previously heard Fervent Samsara saying he would bring some companions to join Zero Wing with him and that these companions were all Tier 6. Since they had arrived so soon, he could get them to help him with some matters. Meanwhile, Pace Angel disconnected the call and quickly registered Fervent Samsara's group once she received Shifeng's answer. Roughly half an hour later, Fervent Samsara's group entered Shifeng's office under Pace Angel's guidance. Upon entering the room, the youths following Fervent Samsara immediately scrutinized Shifeng with curious eyes. "So, he's the rumored Lord of War Goddesses," the charming and candid-looking young woman standing next to Fervent Samsara exclaimed as she looked at Shifeng. After they had chosen to join Zero Wing, Fervent Samsara shared the fact that Shifeng was Zero Wing's guild leader Black Flame with them, looking to have them be in or of Zero Wing. After all, few people did not know of Black Flame's deeds in the current Greater God's domain. "Enough from all of you. Especially you, Bygone. Don't disgrace the Star Soul Adventurer team's name," Fervent Samsara said as he glared at the young woman beside him. When Fervent Samsara officially announced he would join Zero Wing, Shifeng had shared his true identity with him. The revelation shocked him greatly, as he never thought Zero Wing's guild leader had started from nothing and didn't have any powers backing him. But it was also because of this that he grew even more confident in Zero Wing's prospects, going as far as to persuade his companions to join Zero Wing with him. "I'm sorry for the unsightly display, Guild Leader Black Flame." After glaring at the young woman named Bygone Magic, Fervent Samsara apologized to Shifeng. Then, he asked, "May I know what you have summoned us here for?" "Star Soul?" Shifeng suddenly stopped the work he had on hand and looked at Fervent Samsara's in surprise. "You all are from the Star Soul Adventurer team?" Although Shifeng had long known Fervent Samsara was extraordinary and the companions he brought would most likely be extraordinary as well, he didn't think they would be of such extraordinary origins. There were 8 legendary adventurer teams in the Greater God's domain. These were all adventurer teams that had accomplished miraculous achievements. Meanwhile, Star Soul was one of these legendary adventurer teams, and the whole adventurer team only consisted of 20 members. Yet, despite having so few members, not only did Star Soul successfully help a holy city fend off one of the Greater God's domain's 22 taboos, but the adventurer team had also heavily injured said taboo-level monster. When Star Soul accomplished this feat in Shifeng's previous life, its fame instantly spread across the Greater God's domain. However, because Star Soul's members normally kept their identities a secret, nobody had any concrete information on the adventurer team's members. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3576, Chapter 650, Zero Wing Branch Guild. Chapter 3576, Chapter 650, Zero Wing Branch Guild. Chapter 650, Zero Wing Branch Guild. Have you heard of us before, Guild Leader Black Flame? Fervent Samsara asked, feeling a little surprised by Shifeng's reaction. Star Soul's name might be somewhat well known among the 12 sanctuaries, but outside of the 12 sanctuaries, only conglomerates would be aware of the adventurer team's existence. So, Fervent Samsara found it hard to believe Shifeng would have heard of Star Soul before. "I've heard of you all in the sanctuaries," Shifeng explained after calming his initial surprise. "I heard that every member of your adventurer team is incredibly strong and that you all can slay even Tier 6 gods. Star Soul had aided the various conglomerates in many crusades in the 12 sanctuaries during his previous life. Among them included raids of Tier 6 gods. However, after Star Soul's well-known battle against one of the 22 taboos, the adventurer team stopped accepting commissions completely, and its name gradually faded into obscurity. Although many people speculated the cause of Star Soul's disappearance, most agreed that it was likely due to the adventurer team's final battle. In the fight against the taboo-level monster, Star Soul lost more than half its members, including its commander and vice-commander. These individuals had permanently lost their qualifications to log into God's domain, and even God's domain's many resurrection methods were ineffective against them. This had most likely led to the adventurer team being incapable of continuing its activities. Even so, Star Soul remained a legend in the Greater Gods domain. After all, the Greater Gods domain's 22 taboos were publicly regarded by the various powers as existences that should never be provoked. Simply being able to escape from one of these 22 taboos was already an incredible feat, yet Star Soul had managed to heavily injure one of these existences. "You exaggerate, Guild Leader Black Flame. We simply got lucky while helping those conglomerates with their raid," Fervent Samsara answered. Then, he repeated his question, "May I know what you need us to do for you?" Hearing Fervent Samsara's question, Shafone got straight to the point and said, "I hope you can head to Gazing Moon City of the Starlight Realm's ancient river kingdom and establish a branch for Zero Wing there. The Eternal Realm might be crucial for the Greater Gods domain's various powers, but it was still only a small part of the Greater Gods domain. Currently, while it might seem like Zero Wing had become one of the Crystal City of Secret's leading powers, apart from fifth-floor experts, it couldn't even come close to matching ordinary hegemonic powers in other aspects. If no changes were made, Zero Wing's advantages would instantly disappear once the various powers located the Eternal Realm. It might even have difficulty protecting its current territories. Hence, Zero Wing needed to expand its development in the Greater Gods domain. It was especially so now that there wasn't much time before the world passage of his home god's domain opened. Once the world passage was fully opened, whether it was the ancient river kingdom or the surrounding kingdoms and empires, all of the powers based in these countries would invade his home god's domain and occupy the resources there. Every god's domain was the foundation of development for the world it was tied to. If a world were to lose its god's domain, all of its inhabitants would face much greater difficulty surviving in the greater world in the future. The reason for this was that the inhabitants of each world could only create a god's domain account in their own god's domain. If a world lost its god's domain, it would mean that future generations could no longer create a god's domain account easily. Not to mention, every god's domain had some unique legendary and inferior divine artifact rank materials. The world bosses that periodically spawned was also a stable source of fragmented legendary weapons and equipment. And, while not a reliable source, the occasional legendary quest that emerged was also an opportunity for players to obtain legendary weapons and equipment. These were all items crucial to a guild's development. Guild Leader Black Flame, it might not be difficult for Star Soul to establish a foothold in the ancient river kingdom, but I'm afraid developing a branch guild there isn't going to be easy. Bygone Magic, who was Star Soul's vice commander and the young woman standing next to Fervent Samsara, said. Even if we have the necessary resources and offer attractive benefits to recruit members, the local powers won't just stand by and watch as we take a cut of their profits. They will try to drive us out at all costs. We simply don't have the ability to keep guild members safe out in the fields with only so few of us. While it was important for a guild to recruit new members, it was even more important for the guild to have the ability to help these new members level up. While Star Soul was strong enough to fight against hegemonic powers, it simply didn't have the necessary manpower to protect guild members grinding out in the fields from ambushes. Not to mention, Star Soul's members needed to level up themselves as well. They couldn't afford to play nanny around the clock. "You don't have to worry about this," Shafong said, chuckling. "Once you arrive, just focus on recruiting members. You won't have to participate in low-tier battles. All you need to do is protect the guild's residents and one particular building. In return, your GCP compensation will be 3 times higher than the Eternal Realms members. In addition, you can also exchange for items limited to only internal and core members." Shafong was not at all worried about whether Zero Wing could develop itself in the ancient river kingdom. His only concern was whether Zero Wing had enough combat power to protect the 100 Refinement Building. The 100 Refinement Building in his previous life was famous throughout the Starlight Realm. Not only did it generate a tremendous amount of wealth each day, but it was also a paradise for nurturing low-tiered newcomers. Because of this, many powers sought to acquire it, with some even aiming to destroy it to prevent others from obtaining it. Originally, he had planned to wait for Zero Wing's forces in the miniature ancient world to grow stronger and for his home god's domain's world passage to fully open before opening the 100 Refinement Building to the public. At that time, with Mysterious Moon and 100 Flower Palace's strength, defending the 100 Refinement building shouldn't be too big of a problem. But now that the Star Soul Adventurer team had come to join Zero Wing, there was no longer a need to wait. With the Adventurer team's 19 Tier 6 experts, defending the 100 Refinement building definitely wouldn't be a problem. Items exclusive to internal and core members. Bygone Magic had her interest piqued when she heard Shifeng's words. She knew that Zero Wing's internal members had access to incredible items. Not only could they exchange for the Behemoth set, a combat-ranked secret treasure set, but they could also exchange for mana purification techniques, items which were incredibly rare even in the Eternal Realm. These items were also one of the reasons they had followed Fervent Samsara to Zero Wing. Here is the exchange list. You can take a look for yourselves, Shifeng said as he shared with everyone present information on the extraordinary secret treasure sets and bronze mana purification techniques that only Zero Wing's core members could exchange. Then, he smiled and continued, if you don't have any more questions, you can head to Gazing Moon City right away. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,